It all comes down to this, the wild card. To conclude my portfolio, I've created a visual presentation to show you my fully cultured artistic skills. So I analyzed Major Dieter Hellstrom with the Gestapo in The Inglourious Bastards. Let's start with scene 1. This scene is from Chapter 3, German Night in Paris. It is in the scene that Major Hellstrom was first introduced in the film. As you can see, Shoshana was on top of the ladder, adjusting the letters on the theater board. This signifies that her status was powerful, affiliated with people of greater status, and untouchable. Psychologically, the effect of the low-angle shots in which she was portrayed in makes her look strong and powerful, whereas Hellstrom was quite the contrary. Hellstrom was on the ground, looking towards Shoshana. A high-angle shot was used to make him look vulnerable and powerless. This is ironic because she's merely a French girl in a world of Nazis and he is a high-ranking official of the Gestapo. His jealousy gets the best of him when he commands her to descend and get into the car. Once she climbs down the ladder and steps foot on the ground, their statuses suddenly become equal, one equally as powerful as the other. Hellstrom, like the jealous bastard he is, orders her to get her ass into the car.
Beweg deinen Arsch ins Auto.
He needed to feel dominant, a sign that connects him to a regular Gestapo member. He played a minor role in this scene, almost reflecting as a designated driver for a commoner. Hence, his presence went unnoticed. After he brings Shoshana to the dinner, he puts on a facade, his best show in front of his supervisors, also implying that he was gentle when he had escorted Shoshana. Joller was about to introduce Hellstrom, and Hellstrom interrupted him and said,
Ja, aber ich habe mich noch gar nicht vorgestellt. Sturmanführer Dieter Hellstrom
This
ist
quote
da.
was filmed as a medium shot, which gives the audience a partial view of the background and also shows Hellstrom's facial expressions in the context of his body language. This type of shot was perfect because it is used when the subject in the shot is delivering information. This is the first time that he is formally introduced to the audience. Soon after, with hate in his eyes and a wide grin on his lips, he pulls out a chair and asks Madame Moise to have a seat. It is clearly evident that he finds this act demeaning, for she is a commoner and he is giving her his utmost respect, solely to impress his supervisors. To add a classy touch, he pours her champagne and then for himself. This is another act of jealousy because he is trying to fit in and makes assumptions that pouring himself some champagne will bring him to a higher status at the table. The camera pans leftward behind him. It starts from his right shoulder and then pans over to this black, fluffy dog. There is some symbolism here. This representation could signify that the dog's fur is his uniform. No matter how much hair she grows, she is still a little bitch on a leash. This is perfectly portrayed when Colonel Hans Landa arrives at the table.
Ah, Landa, da sind Sie ja!
As you have seen, Hellstrom without a second thought stands upright and salutes him, practically as an involuntary action. This gesture makes the audience question his overall standing in the military. Hellstrom then leaves the table overwhelmed by the power of his authorities. Major Hellstrom once again appears in Chapter 4, Operation Kino. In this scene, an argument erupts between Lieutenant Archie Hickox and Wellheim, in which Wellheim questions,
Entschuldigen Sie, Herr Sturmführer, Sie haben einen sehr ungewöhnlichen Akzent.
and then Hugo Stiglitz threatens to jail Wellheim due to his drunkenness. That is when the devil himself intervenes. It is in this chapter that his presence is finally acknowledged and his skills are elaborately displayed. His uniform shining with colorful insignia, and his posture was firm as ever. A Nazi armband encompassing his left bicep gives an insight into his loyalty for his country. This scene setting took place in an underground La Louisiane tavern in France. Hellstrom was a man no one wanted to pick a fight with since Germans had the country on lockdown. However, he suspects a lieutenant for being a traitor to his country. This is the first time the audience learned something useful about Hellstrom. His perception skills are all around fantastic. Hickox, a British secret agent, explains a convincing story about the origins of his accent. As he explains the story, the camera takes a wide-angle shot and everybody in the tavern is shown. They were pin-drop silent, constantly turning their heads to captain to major and major to captain, and were amazed at Hickox's pre-rehearsed stage act. Bridget von Hammersmark, a beautiful actress, sides with the captain and cracks an awful joke, to which everyone starts laughing.
Sein Bruder sieht wesentlich besser aus als er.
Once again, the elevation differences represents each man's status. Major Hellstrom is standing looking down in a low-angle shot, hence representing great power, and has the upper hand on the current situation. On the other side, Bridget von Hammersmark, Lieutenant Hickox, and Sergeant Hugo Stiglitz are sitting down at a table. A high-angle shot was used to portray them, thus representing the weak and the unconvincing. They are at a disadvantage. Hellstrom finally accepts Captain's story and joins them at the table.
Herrschaften, darf ich mich zu Ihnen setzen?
Gerne.
Dieter Hellstrom sits down and casually asks Captain,
Was tun Sie hier?
to which the captain responds in a question.
Sie kennen jeden Deutschen in Frankreich.
This gives the audience an insight into the type of man Hellstrom is, intelligent and noteworthy. It takes a great amount of dedication to memorize every single German station in France, but the devil boy plays it cool and responds.
Jeden, der es wert ist.
It is quite appeasing that the Gestapo beast can crack a joke. Later we find out that the actress Hammersmark has her 3 escorts attending the Minister's Gobbles film premiere, a perfect reason to end all suspicion. Suddenly there's a jump cut in the scene to a neighboring table. 6 drunk Germans are playing a card game called Blind Man's Bluff. It's a variation of poker in that each person sees the cards of all players except his or her own. Then the person must stick the card onto his or her forehead and guess who or what is written on the card. Hellstrom finds this game interesting and fun, therefore he introduces it to the table. He chooses this particular table because he's the type of man who does not fraternize with enlisted men, hence referring to the lower class Germans. This indicates to the audience that he is, in fact, a picky person and chooses favorites. Perhaps he wants to stay at the table a bit longer to find out about these mysterious people whom he knows very little about. His suspicions have not yet neutralized. Curiosity drives this man. So he stands up and commands the other table to give up their cards so he may enjoy socializing with the beautiful actress and her escorts. The Gestapo is known for getting what they want, and this commanding act brings out the Gestapo in him. He sits back at the table and distributes the cards as he explains the rules of the game. Hellstrom, as the attention seeker he is willing to go first to demonstrate how to truly play this game. His special card was King Kong, written by Hugo Stiglitz, and he asks a series of questions to which the group responds with answers. King Kong was a major symbol in this film. Fun fact, Adolf Hitler's favorite movie was also King Kong. When Major Hellstrom reasons out that his card reads King Kong, he gives Quentin Tarantino's analysis of the movie as an allegory of the American slave trade. Quentin Tarantino is greatly fond of his subtextual interpretations, but when he first writes his scripts, he's rarely analytical, and then later he goes back and adds some of subtextual features. For example, in this particular case, King Kong was a metaphor for the prehistoric slave trade passage to America. Tarantino always builds up his story from scratch. Major Hellstrom, played by August Diehl, does a mind-blowing job at getting deeper and dirtier about America's racial past, evolving his every thought. In the middle of his guessing, he summarizes the basic idea.
Ich bin also im Urwald geboren. Ich habe Amerika besucht. Der Besuch war für mich nicht von Vorteil. Aber die Schlussfolgerung liegt nahe, dass es für jemanden anderen von Vorteil war.
The audience could guess that he already knows the answer, but he dwells on the fact that America was a racist country. And if anyone were to have any affiliations with America, that would mean that they were racist too. But no one questions the irony that Germany was also racist towards Jews and in fact most religions. After his midpoint summary, he states things such as,
Fuhr ich da mit dem Schiff?
Ja.
Geschah die Reise gegen meinen Willen?
Ja.
Auf der Schiffsreise lag ich da in Ketten.
Ja.
Als ich in Amerika ankam, wurde ich da in Ketten zur Schau gestellt.
These questions are hinting to the subtext, and the audience definitely knows exactly what he's referring to, the slaves on the passage to America. And it all becomes clear when he says,
Bin ich die Geschichte des Negers in Amerika?
The connection to the movie King Kong was brilliantly displayed to the audience via the mindset of the Gestapo major. Before watching Inglourious Basterds, the audience probably assumed that King Kong in 2005 was just about a furry, hideous ape causing havoc in New York City. But now, after watching the Inglourious Basterds, it brought the story to life. With the step-by-step evolution of questions, one can relate to the past and to the German pride. Soon after, Major gets excited for he has guessed the word correctly, and he wants to treat his new acquaintances a 33-year-old bottle of whiskey from the Scottish Highlands. The captain lifts 3 fingers up for the bartender to see and orders 3 glasses. He uses his index, middle, and ring finger. In this pivotal scene, the British spy outs himself simply by using the wrong fingers to order a drink. Hellstrom allows the men to take their last shots before he says,
Ich muss sagen, ich habe genug von dem Affentheater.
Suddenly, the party comes to an end when he cocks his Walter and points it at the captain's testicles. And when the captain asks,
Warum richten Sie Ihre Warte auf meine Hoden?
Hellstrom responds,
Weil Sie sich eben verraten haben. Hauptsturmführer.
Hellstrom is referring to Captain's improper use of fingers. A true German would have ordered 3 with the index, middle, and thumb extended. This is the common way most Western Europeans, such as Germans, Italians, the Swiss, and the French, count with their fingers, and also extends to how they order drinks. When counting, the thumb is always the first digit, representing number 1, followed by the index finger, middle finger, and so on and so forth. Captain Archie Hickox returns the favor by pointing his gun at Major's testicles and says, I've had a gun pointed at your balls since you sat down. And finally, the impatient Hugo Stiglitz goes above and beyond by actually sticking a minigun right above the Major's balls. Hugo quotes,
Bin ich ein richtiger Frederik Zoller.
Implying that he's a sharpshooter and a killer. However, Major has the audacity to joke. Major already took an oath when he joined the Gestapo that he will never succumb to a traitor or an enemy of his country. He does not fear death, but he can easily evade it if he listens to the British spies. Knowing Major, he does not. To briefly explain the storyline, the French tavern becomes a 19th century American Wild West cowboy saloon.
Stiglitz, say auf Wiedersehen to your Nazi boss.
And the young German lashes out a machine gun and nearly kills everyone, Rambo style. Hellstrom's glory days come to an end. He chooses loyalty to his country over the chances of survival. He had the chance to surrender and leave with the British spies, but his Gestapo mind disagreed. Hugo Stiglitz goes berserk and stabs Major Dieter Hellstrom of the Gestapo in the back of his neck several times until he himself is shot to death by Wellheim. By the time the excitement is over, everyone except for Sergeant Wellheim and British von Hammersmark are dead. Major Dieter Hellstrom of the Gestapo's chapter closes permanently. If anyone were to say that the film lived up to its title, it would be an understatement. Inglourious Basterds does a fantastic job at guiding the audience through the film from start to finish in a very beautiful way. The director, Quentin Tarantino, is a filmmaker who creates his characters and through them, the very stylized realm of tough guys, brutal violence, and insidious comedy are established. Major Dieter Hellstrom stood out in terms of displaying the true color in various situations. A shade of this and a tint of that was illustrated as the character developed throughout the film. The German Nazi from Gestapo, played by August Diehl, is a unique character with an overwhelming sense of national pride. And it is that national pride of his that causes his downfall. Son of Satan, blinded by his devotion to his country, chooses loyalty over his own survival.